Hi, I'm Trina Lee. Welcome to MGig. On this show, I speak to Adrian Basso, the General Manager for PBS. Our story will be on singer and stage performer Annie Lee, and later on, the Munster man himself, Matt Ryan, joins me for our regular chat. But first, John Perring. John was a central figure in rolling back the ill-conceived liquor licensing regulations that threatened live music in Victoria in 2010, and is a member of the Victorian State Government's Live Music Roundtable. He's written papers on liquor licensing regulation and live music, to name two, and is also a musician. John also operates iconic Melbourne live music venues, including the Tote Hotel, Bar Open, Pony the Melbourne Spanish Club, and Yas. Hi, John. Welcome.
Thank you.
How are you going today?
Not too bad.
Yeah, considering.
That's right.
Yeah. I wanted to start at the beginning. Obviously, you're involved in a few venues and also the music industry in Melbourne. How were the venues looking and the music industry prior to Corona, and what are the state of them now?
Well, it was sort of rolling along all quite nicely, really. The live scene anyway it's been quite robust in Melbourne. Perhaps, almost surprisingly, really, considering, it's been under lots of pressures, but it's never succumbed like it has perhaps in Sydney. And then when COVID came along, it just ground to a complete halt.
Yeah.
And so we're not twiddling our thumbs. There's actually lots going on. But the one thing that isn't going on is live music.
Yeah, it was overnight. Just completely shut down.
Pretty much, yeah. It was those 2 weeks. And, as the infection numbers were going up, bands were starting to pull out of shows. Everyone was questioning whether it was safe to play or not. And, pretty much within a week we had no acts. And then, the following week after that, we were closed.
Yeah. And how are venues surviving at the moment? Not really surviving. It's probably a bad way to put it. Because you've got so many people involved when it comes to running a venue, having live acts. You got your staff as well. How are they coping at the moment?
Well, we're not surviving. To be blunt about it, we're going backwards quite rapidly. 2 days before the JobKeeper was ready to register, we didn't know whether we could do it or not.
Yeah, there was a bit of confusion around the eligibility
certainly was.
there.
Oh, and also the financing of it.
Yeah.
We got a call from the bank on the Saturday about an overdraft facility that the government had backed, which allowed us to cash flow the wages, so that we could, to cover that period between when we have to pay them and then when the JobKeeper came back into our accounts. So that only happened 2 days beforehand, and from an inbound call from the bank.
Yeah, that's kind of pushing it, isn't it?
Yeah. And although we have so many musicians putting on shows and at Bar Open and the Tote, none of them got onto JobKeeper. So the people that we got on were all bar staff, essentially, people doing the hospitality work and the behind-the-scenes work.
Yeah.
Our sound engineer, one of them, took off to Perth, go back, live with his mum. All his work completely dried up.
Yeah.
He just before the borders closed, he did the white line fever thing, and the code of conduct around rental. If you're renting a premises, is very helpful. It stops. There's two sort of major things that have been addressed, but we're still accruing debt. So if you've got bank loans, you still have to pay the interest, like on a building, for instance. Insurance premiums, $40,000 to $60,000 annually, they're still all in place. We still have to pay those. If you've got equipment leases, you still got to service those. So, there's a whole number of things that are basically just digging a big hole. And so what we really need from the government is some way to this is state government and federal government. They can both do different things. is to basically address the needs of venues' working capital to keep them, just even keep them surviving. And because we've got to, when we start to reopen, we're not going to be able to reopen at exactly how we closed. The capacity that we're able to utilise is probably going to be between, somewhere between 15% and probably somewhere around about 40% of our licensed capacities. And so we can't operate even profitably, just to do shows. Ticket prices need to be somewhere $40, $60, maybe as high as $100.
Yeah.
Is that going to fly in the marketplace? I don't think so.
No.
So, yeah, that's the biggest problem is working capital until this situation passes. The federal government is less receptive than the state government. The state government at least is listening. I've been involved in meetings, and Music Victoria's been in meetings with, the Premier's Department, the Treasury, trying to put a case why we should get some form of financial help.
Yeah, some sort of relief.
Yeah, the federal government just seems to be staring our sector down, the whole arts sector.
The whole, yeah.
And also the universities, really, they seem to have a problem with the knowledge economy.
Yeah.
Just in general.
And with these, the start of venues being able to, have 20 patrons, I think they're saying on the 1st of June, and then they're going to up it slowly.
Yeah, I mean, technically we could put artists on, but, we just can't afford to.
It's really not viable.
That. Yeah, that's right.
And for the musicians at the moment that are struggling, how can we help them?
Well, that's a really tough question because, what they need to be able to do is get paid for their art, really.
Yeah.
Get paid for their performances. And that's going to be a really tough equation. I mean, if you go back historically, they've lost all that revenue from recorded music. As the pressures of Napster came down upon us, and then streaming, where they get virtually nothing back from streaming revenues. So all those recording revenues have gone out of their situation. They've fallen back on live as the only the only way to earn a living, and now that's evaporated.
Yeah.
And so it's a real problem. So the only people who are able to sort of probably operate in that are going to be established artists. So the real problem will be for the artists who are trying to become established, for them to have opportunities and be remunerated as well.
Yeah.
So how we structure ticketing's all going to have to change.
Yeah, it's going to look a bit different, I imagine.
Yeah.
And with the online streaming, there's some platforms at the moment that are trying to sort of monetize it so the artists and sound engineers, sometimes even the venues, can still make some sort of money. Is that sort of, in your opinion, do you think that's realistic in the post-corona sort of world for them to be able to monetize that and make money off sort of live streaming?
I think that's really hard. I mean, you look at the media has had great difficulty monetizing online content. The print media, if you look at journalism, they've had great difficulty trying to get revenues back from online content. So I think it's going to be really tough if you sort of compare it to other segments.
And in terms of live streaming, do you think that's something that you'll sort of incorporate into your venues?
Yeah, well, it seems everyone's becoming a TV studio now that everyone I talk to. It's how
many podcasts have popped up in the middle of Corona, right?
Yeah, and of course, we're also looking at it. Surprise, surprise.
Yeah.
So we're going to have a bit of a play with it. How does that sit to what we do? It'll be a sort of an extra thing. I think if we're going to do it, we have to do it well.
Yeah.
Putting a sort of a mediocre product up, I just don't think it's going to resonate. It's a different experience than live, So, if you're watching it on a phone or watching it on a computer, you've got a tiny little speaker that's very, very, very different
Yeah, you're not getting
to
the same
being in the
quality.
space. In front of a performer, who you can visually see the sweat dripping off the end of their nose through a massive sound system with big subs, where it's a visceral experience.
Feel it.
It's an intimate experience, and so that translating that to some sort of experience on a computer screen, it's just not the same thing. If you have a look at things like National Theatre Live, when they take theatre and transpose it into a cinema, that works really well. But I'm not convinced at all that same product is going to squeeze into a phone.
And how do you think, like after Corona, once venues, you can't kill live music. Obviously, eventually with time, it's going to kick off again.
Yeah. Music's really subversive. It'll be around.
Yeah. How do you think, like, with all this music being heavily online at the moment, how do you think that'll change sort of the music scene?
Yeah, well, I think that's yet to play out.
Yeah, it's a bit unknown.
Yeah, I don't think fundamentally the music will change. Maybe the relationship with how it's produced will change. And, like every time music's had to move from one space to another, from a big concert hall down to a small room, it changes in its character compositionally. Or when instruments change from acoustic to electrically, it fundamentally changed. Musicians will easily adapt to how that works, just organically as part of the creative process. But from a perspective of translating that into how you actually earn it as a living, that's in many ways it's a separate issue.
I want to ask you about the live music action plan.
The St Kilda one.
Yeah? You want to tell us a little bit about that?
Well, I was contracted by the council to do some background work and research and basically go and talk to people within the music community and put together a bunch of ideas and try and sort of recommend some ways that the St Kilda scene could sort of get back on its legs, because historically it's been contracting now for probably 30 years from really its heyday, sometime in the 80s. Which, I don't need to talk about that. I think everyone remembers that.
Do they?
The Crystal Ballroom.
Do they remember it?
I don't know. Maybe you're right. The Esplanade, when it was absolutely, heaving.
Yeah.
The Prince of Wales. They used to have free gigs I used to go to every Thursday night when I was in my 20s. There was just lots going on everywhere.
You just roll from venue to venue.
Well, you could, yes, that's right. To where we are now, we had a bunch of a bunch of smaller venues, and it's sort of receded off Fitzroy Street. So sort of looked at all that, but probably that's all really out of date now. The council will need to take stock again post COVID.
Yeah,
because it'll really need to take an interventionist strategy, I think, to get things happening here, because the hospitality sector won't be able to afford to invest, really.
Yeah. Well, it was already sort of having issues, prior to...
Yeah, and and there were also the vexed issues around, compliance on sound emissions and things. Seem to be a lot more complex down here than other parts of Melbourne. Really, in Yarra, it's not an issue at all. In fact, it's not even on their compliance radar any longer. They just regard it as pretty much resolved.
Yeah.
Same in the city of Melbourne from what they tell me. So I know that the council certainly acknowledged that they had issues around that. And one of the things I was sort of really saying to them is you need to be a lot more transparent about how these processes work, so they can be seen to be fair.
Yeah.
And in their live music action plan, they certainly acknowledged that.
The music business model is changing. How do you think this is going to look after lockdown?
Yeah, well, it's a good question. I'm not sure anyone knows the answer to this, but traditionally what we've had is we've had the artists on the top, and they are being serviced by, a whole bunch of things like venues and production companies and festivals and artist managers and publicists and all these sort of professional people who are all seem to be earning money. You get record labels, and they're all getting remunerated, some better than others, some really well. And it seems to me that when you actually have a look at the money flow, it's completely the opposite. The artists are on the bottom when they sort of get the scraps that are left over. So the big thing that needs to happen is there needs to be some acknowledgement that artists are able to have a sustainable income. They can actually have real careers and be able to establish themselves like they could 30 years ago. And there's a whole lot of vested interests who are all sucking money out of the situation. So that whole thing needs to be shaken up. Because without the artists, we've got absolutely nothing.
Yeah.
And that's the situation that we're going to be in post-COVID, is that the artists are going to find it very difficult to be able to get remunerated.
Especially with a lack of venues.
Yeah, so the whole thing's got to be smashed apart.
Yeah.
The whole way we look at copyright, the whole way that, the service industries that service those artists, need to make sure that there are revenues all the way down through that system is flowing back to the artists. And if we get some sort of change like that, I don't know how that exactly looks, but, you've got to pull the whole thing apart to make that happen.
PBS is one of Melbourne's longest-running community broadcasters with a heavy focus on supporting local artists. I have General Manager Adrian Basso on the line. Hey, Adrian, how you going?
Good, Tarina. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you so much for joining me for a quick chat. I just wanted to get an idea of how lockdown has affected community radio and the amount of local content being able to be broadcasted at the moment.
We're still broadcasting. We kind of were quite determined to do that because we felt the best way through all of this for us and music lovers and musicians was for PBS to keep on doing what it does. And so we really stripped back the number of people coming into the station. We shut the doors, no non-essential people. So a lot of the volunteers that we'd normally have doing library, reception, social media, we closed the doors to them, and we just kept it open to broadcasters and had one staff member each day during the week, and then applied a regime of cleaning, and, that sort of stuff, and just advice to announcers just to make sure that we were sort of safe and protected. And so we've been trying to support the community by just staying around and surviving, really. So we're quite determined to do that. We took a pretty significant hit to our sponsorship, which is a kind of a largish part of our income, because all the festivals and venues early hit by restrictions, and we sort of felt that impact pretty quickly. So we're still here, we're still broadcasting, we're still playing lots of local music, and we've developed a few new programs, like a lot of people, musicians, and getting them to record stuff, especially for us, and us releasing it. All our Studio 5 lives, which are the live performances that we have done here at the station in our Studio 5 performance room.
Okay, great. So you've been able to continue that.
Well, no, we stopped that.
Yeah.
But then we've kind of from the vault or revisited that material, and it's all been local Melbourne stuff. So whether it's the Teskey Brothers or Bamboos and various local Melbourne acts, so we kind of decided to sort of stay local for our repeats, I suppose.
Which is really important right now. I was
just going to say, like, our mission is to nurture, inspire, and support Melbourne's diverse music community. So, like, that's it's in our blood, and we've been doing it for 40 years. I would like to think that we can get back to some sort of normality, and people will really be keen to get out and do things and do what they've been missing out for, what is it, like 8-9 weeks now.
Yeah.
And I know that it won't be full opening up of the floodgates, but certainly there'll be people really keen to go see live bands, as much as musicians missing that experience and opportunity too, because sort of like a two-way street with performances. You've got the audience, you've got the bands, and they both feed off each other. And you can't, like, you can do live recording, not live recordings, but you can do, whether it's Instagram stuff in your room or from some sort of studio setting, but it's really hard to replace that live experience when you've got people in the same room and that kind of immediacy too. So I think people will be keen. If anything, a lot of the festivals and whatever will probably have a stronger local focus, because with all the restrictions on overseas travel.
We're not having many international acts coming
through.
So
that will probably be an obvious. So, and they're already talking about that, like, a festival that'll be all Australian, which is good, but it's also because there's no other way of doing it. So, and that'll be good for local musicians and local artists, and I'm sure fans will love it too.
Yeah, definitely. You guys are just finishing up your PBS radio festival.
Oh, we're pretty much beginning it more than finishing.
Oh,
we're a few days in, and we've got like maybe 10 days to go. So,
okay.
Yeah. Not quite finished.
No, so you're right in the heart of it then. So it's super important right now, especially I guess for people to jump on the radio festival and subscribe and keep that community radio alive to keep our local artists, keep giving them that outlet.
And people have always supported us. We've been around for 40 years, and the response has been fantastic. Like, I think in many ways we probably haven't had as much deep and meaningful relationship with our listeners, because they're all locked at home, and they're listening to us for longer, and our text message sort of machine's just been going nuts, like constant, just saying thank you, thank you, thank you. Because we took quite a deliberate step early on not to bang on about the COVID. In fact, almost remain silent on it and just play music to be a respite and comfort. So if you want to find out about what's happening in the world, you don't listen to PBS.
No.
Unless it's about music. So pbsfm.org.au. Just takes a few minutes and you'll feel better for it. And you get acknowledged on air. We thank you. And you become part of this. Potentially, you could win the Vespa or a turntable or guitar, lots of good things. But the main reason why people sign up is because they, want to make sure that we're still around and they enjoy what we do.
Support your community radio. That's it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Annie Lee has come a long way since writing poetry and songs in northern Tasmania when she was a child. For years, Annie has been creating and performing a range of quality shows to cabaret and stage shows, including the multi-award-winning Kranksky Sisters. Annie has also directed several productions for theatre groups, music ensembles and solo artists. Like many people in the music business, getting a grip on new technology hasn't been easy.
From experience at trying to get, trying to get a flow on with your work and continue working into your older years, not only with aside from the social media aspect of it's diversifying from one art form to the other, and also embracing other art forms and collaborating with other people from other art forms. We visual arts, musicians and actors together, visual artists, musicians and actors together, or and also creating your skills, developing your skills in that you're directing and you're, if you can, looking at directing shows, writing your own materials, really important. Not expecting that work's going to come to you, if you just got the one art form, or because it's these days it's less likely to do that. It's more that you've got to go and create it yourself, and so having those opening up to other art forms, not just one art form, is really important. I know from my own work I do, theatre, and over the years when I used to work in stage productions, and noticed that on one hand I wanted to do more singing because I'm a singer as well, and there was the opportunity, so that was one reason I started to create my own work, but also just for the work to continue, because and just being a stage actor, the work's, you're waitressing in between, it's not always going to flow on. So I created my own works quite a few years back to start that happening, and one of the acts I did create took off and made money for me over the years, so I'm actually living off that now, so that's got to start creating. The coffers are getting low, I better start doing some more work. But yeah, so it's really important to go, okay, and also I do street theatre, as well. I'll go and do a Bulgarian fortune teller, and I've got other acts that I do, lots of different things, because there's always going to be, as artists, musicians, whatever, we've got to look at embrace other art forms and go, what can I do in this area? Who can I collaborate for that project? Or, there's always going to be aspects of yourself you can develop into other art forms that can create that buoyancy as far as money making, concerns. For some it's easier, and for some it's more difficult. And I think for people of my age, it's more difficult, because we know now that we've got to put it online, we've got to embrace the modern technology and social media to be able to find platforms for our music. In some ways it's easier to get it seen. Well, of course it is easier to get it seen and easier to get it noticed, and in some there's even places you can put it on to sell it, which is fantastic. It used to be that you have to go out and show yourself and tour and perform to be able to be seen and sell your CDs after the show. But now it's so, yeah, so for someone of my generation, I find it's sometimes a bit daunting, because you go, I've got to embrace all that now, and I've got to go and get that, I've got to be able to put it online. But I know that if I do that, it's actually, I may be in a better position than I was earlier. I think it has affected me in that I've got to pull my socks up and start doing it more. At the same time, I cross over because I do cabaret stuff. I'm a cabaret performer, and it's a theatrical stage there. So I find in my genre, doing more cabaret stuff, that it's a bit harder for me, because I know that I have to embrace social media, and I have to start getting on and creating platforms and creating sites and about my work. And I know then it's going to be easier. But I think a lot of my age group resisted a little bit. I know, people in the industry that I know, some friends of mine have said, oh, it's just too hard to do this. But I know in a way it's actually a fantastic platform, and we all have to go ahead and use it.
Hi Matt, thanks for joining me.
Cheers, Durian. Thanks for having me on as always.
How's your week been?
It's been all right. I'm still working, which in this climate, there's no reason to complain about. So
yeah, 100%.
Yeah, so I'm pretty fortunate.
You're essential.
I don't know about that, but I'll take it.
Yeah. We spoke to Adrian Basso. He's the general manager for PBS earlier in the show.
Yep.
I want to ask you about your views. You do a little bit on community radio here and there. Your views on how important community radio is and to the music industry here in Melbourne especially.
Well, it's vital, particularly more than ever. There's no gigs, so we need entertainment. As we talked about last episode, some record shops are open, but in a limited capacity. So people need entertainment. They need to hear where they can find new music, and community radio is perfect for that. So PBS in particular has been a bit of a lifeline to me, discovering a lot of the music that I love and shaped who I am today. And Phil McDougall from Sunglass After Dark, I met him at a gig once, and he actually read my zine.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, which I was surprised at. And anyway, we became friends, and he had me on the show a few times. One time I presented a fall special with him, which was very exciting. And every year he wheels me out for Radiothon to basically say what PBS means to me. And I mean, it's the only station in the world where you get, say, on Thursday nights, which is a magnificent night, where you got Phil, Michael Mulholland, and Rory, who's a machine in terms of how many subscribers he gets. 5 hours of a sort of garage and punk rock. And then on Sundays, you got a gospel show, you got soul shows on Thursday. It's a wide variety of music. It's a music lover's treat. You could listen to, say, 2 o'clock in the afternoon, listen every day for 7 days, and you'll find 7 different types of music and 7 presenters, all independent, saying what they want, no training, no, have to read sponsors or anything like that, just who they are, be themselves on air, which is vital.
Yeah, definitely. A lot of variety on PBS.
Yeah, and someone like Phil and also Kev Lobotomy, they're great champions of the Melbourne rock scene in particular. Like, if you send them a demo, they'll play it.
Yeah.
There's no agenda there. Just send them, they'll just champion it. And they won't just play it at, say, 5 to 10. Like, they'll play it at a good spot and then play it again. So,
which is what our independent artists definitely need, that support.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they're very approachable people as well. They're not someone that you got to go through a publicist or anything. You just send a letter with a CD. You go straight to the DJ itself.
Yeah. Well, I think it took me 10 minutes to get Adrian on the phone. Just shooting an email to someone. So that was great.
Yeah, which is what community radio should be about.
Yeah. We also spoke to John Perring, one of the co-owners for the Tote. He also has the Yaya's, Bar Open,
Yep.
a few others there. And he's very involved in the music business here in Melbourne. He made a good point about the government needing to do more to support, not only the musicians, the venues, but everyone else involved. Do you think the government should be doing more?
Absolutely. I mean, it seems like, they talk about small business, and it seems like sport a lot of money's gone into, but it seems like it's really, I think with pubs, it seems like the big chain pubs that are going to be looked after with the subsidies, whereas the smaller bars have been sort of forgotten about.
They're suffering.
Yeah, and I mean, what's the Gasso, Spotted Mallard, they've already closed doors. And
Caravan Music Club.
So, hopefully that's it, but it could be more, we don't know. So, and I was talking to a mate of mine who works at a venue in the city. I'm not sure if he'd appreciate me saying his name, but he was basically saying that the rent for their place will have to be subsidised, so basically they have to pay it back no matter what. And he said the law's on his side, so the landlord can't kick him out, but obviously this landlord's just being greedy.
Yeah, and they're just getting further and further in debt in that.
Yeah, exactly. Like, he's not going to be in the street, but obviously he's just stressed that he just doesn't need it this time. So,
yeah.
And I think really the arts and music is going to be the last thing to come. That and sport will be the 2 last things to come back. So 80% of things could come back. Like, we can go have a meal or maybe go to the pub, but say we might be able to go to the Tote Front Bar. We might not be able to go to the band room to see a gig. So, or limited capacity. So I think it's certainly a section that needs to be looked after.
That's all for this week. If you want to get in contact with us, send us an email at ideas@studioemedia.com.au. Thanks for watching. See you next time.